You ever drive back to a place you thought you'd left behind and realize the world didn't just keep spinning? It rearranged the furniture while you were gone. 7 years away, and somebody had put a vinyl sign where my grandfather's porch used to be, a hairline crack where a family story used to live. Welcome to Eagle Rest, HOA dog training grounds. Private members only. I laughed at first. Who forges a whole ranch into a dog park and thinks nobody will notice? Then I walked up to the gate and the laugh died in my throat, because the gate was smart. The fence was new and cameras stared back like jury members who've already made up their minds. My name is Elliot Blaine. Blaine Ranch has been in my family since my granddad hammered the first fence post into Montana dirt and swore he was burying more than a cornerstone. He was burying a claim, a way of life. I'd been 2 continents and a handful of federal maps away, doing fieldwork filling forms, learning how lines on paper can be sacred and how people bend them when it suits their appetite. Coming home, the sage smelled the same, the sky a hard bowl of blue small comforts. But the driveway curved where it shouldn't, the cedar posts were gone, and a prefab shack squatted where the porch light used to swing on summer nights. The man in the shack sucked on a tablet like it was his Bible. "You the owner?" I asked, slow the way you ask when you're not sure which part of a thing is broken, the world or your head. He said no, then said I was trespassing, then told me to leave before he called management. I named myself Elliot J. Blaine, sole beneficiary of the Blaine Family Trust, and watched the way his shoulders locked. Somewhere between his snort and my truck, I opened the county land registry and found my name right where it should be. Title trust, taxes paid. Then beneath the clean lines of proof, a different file stared back, an HOA expansion review that shaded my land like someone had taken a highlighter to my life. That's when the hot kind of rage starts, not the flail your arms burst everything kind, but the cold arithmetic kind. If you're going to steal, don't be sloppy. Whoever did this had been sloppy in a way that betrayed arrogance, and arrogance is traceable. I called Bev at the recorder's office and listened to her click the keys like a knuckle cracking. She found the expansion filing Eagle Rest Hills, tried to redraw lines claiming unused land as common ground. Someone had filed signatures. Someone had stamped the world with a lie. Next morning I came back with an angle grinder and 2 hired kids who needed cash and didn't ask too many questions. We sliced the new latch off the gate and started to peel back the dog ramps and fake turf that had been planted where my grandfather's front stoop once anchored the horizon. We found a corner pin, a small, defiant thing of concrete and history, 27 feet inside what the HOA claimed. I photographed it, time-stamped it, breathed in the smell of old wood and new treachery, and felt the story thicken. That's when she arrived, Karen Fitzroy, high-waisted khakis, pastel blazer, platinum bob sunglasses sharp enough to cut a hole in the sky. She didn't introduce herself. She invoked rules like a priest reading scripture. You're trespassing. You're in violation. I handed her the deed, the Department of the Interior overlay a notarized affidavit from the clerk. She pulled out a phone and dialed like a judge calling in a verdict. I told her to call the sheriff. I wanted her to call the sheriff. I wanted her authority in public so it could be measured against the paper that said my name. Deputy Ray Calder showed up a little while later, sun-browned and slow-moving, the kind of cop who's seen HOA drama and gunplay both and prefers the paperwork to the pyrotechnics. He looked at my folder, then at Karen's glossy maps. These were filed as a request, not an approval, he said, patient as a man reading from a script he'd written himself. Karen sputtered about community codes. Ray told her she was standing on my land. She revved away like a woman whose engine doubles as a tantrum. 2 things changed after that day. 1, the developers came sniffing suits and brochures and glossy packets that said Parcel 53. A Ridgeline Realty agent showed up for a pre-listing walkthrough with an earnest smile and a tablet full of assumptions. The other thing was worse. Someone had forged my signature on a lease dated years back, processed through a sleepy notary's office, and used that lie to build a paper trail that looked respectable. The lease authorized the HOA to use my land to install locks to invite contractors. We found a keypad welded to my gate with prairie fence and security's invoice stuck like a receipt on a crime scene. The notary stamps were cheap, the chain of custody had holes big enough to drive a dump truck through, and the signatures looked like handwriting practice. I called the sheriff, I called my lawyer, and the realtor drove off the way newspapermen leave scenes where the headline has already written itself. The next blow read like old pulp: the well had been sabotaged. Someone had poured industrial quickset concrete into the old wellhead, the exact kind of stupid, cruel stunt that kills water systems and makes a felony look like an afternoon errand. A dead bird lay where runoff pooled like a punctuation mark after a line of bad decisions. I called the environmental folks. They came with clipboards and instruments, and a look that said this could get very expensive for the person who'd thought cover-ups were clever. And then the plot snapped into a braid and pulled tight. Work logs, public contractor entries, time stamps, Rock River Concrete had logged a pour at my coordinates. Motion cameras showed a white Lexus idling at the site the evening the concrete went in. The homeowner who'd filed the complaint against me was on camera directing the pour. Karen filed the environmental complaint the next morning as if she'd invented contamination and needed only to summon shame. Only she'd created the poison herself. When you start trading in forgeries and sabotage, you leave a pathway of evidence the way a drunk leaves a trail of broken bottles. We traced invoices, GPS tags, emails a shell company registered in Utah, even a fake power of attorney that was stamped and sent like something out of a badly written caper. Developers who'd at first been potential partners in a grift suddenly became furious victims, money on the table, reputations on the line, and they started calling their lawyers. The county recorder's office looked at the real deed, then at the fakery side by side, and the clerk's face went the color of a paper burned in a fireplace. I filed emergency injunctions. The sheriff opened an investigation. Environmental prosecutors smelled blood in the water, and my attorney started stacking affidavits like blocks. Karen's empire was a house of cards built on other people's trust. HOA funds misallocated a beautification fund that landscaped the dog field over my granddad's home. A daughter who'd been signed into a fake lease invoices that traced back to her signatures. The court froze, HOA asset subpoenas flew like angry birds, and members started showing up at my gate with emails in hand and apologies in their pockets. There were dangers, anonymous threats, snakes in the mailbox, a late-night attempt to pry open my shipping container where I kept legal files, but there was also the lean, bright thing I wanted proof pulled into light. Deputies found license plates. Trail cams captured people and times. A forensic document analyst put the forgeries under a microscope, and like a dentist finding rotten fillings, named each fake for what it was. When the judge finally read the ruling, the property had never been subject to HOA control. The forged documents were real estate fraud. The well sabotage was an environmental felony. The room exhaled. Karen Fitzroy was sentenced to a long stretch in state prison. Eagle Crest Hills, HOA was dissolved, its assets seized to fund cleanup and restitution. Her daughter was evicted. The dog ramps came down. The cameras went dark. Justice in this case was not an idea, it was a stack of stamped orders and a deputy who would not ignore a paper trail. I won't pretend I felt jubilant at first. There's a slow kind of victory, the one that smells like dust and bleach in courtrooms, and it's different from the cinematic fireworks people expect. I sat by the ruined well with a flashlight and a bottle and sketched plans for a new cabin, a stone house that would look like old things and work like new ones, a place that would keep the memory and add a little peace. I thought about the neighbors who came to apologize, who admitted they'd been fooled by a confident liar, and I thought about the sheriff who'd shown up and said, "Welcome back, Blaine," like it was the simplest sentence in the world. Here's the lesson that finally carved itself into my ribs. Power looks legit until you test it. People with titles can be thieves and paperwork can be a weapon, but proof persistent and patient is the kind of thing that outlasts swagger. The moral isn't just that law can fix an injustice, sometimes it can, but that justice starts when someone refuses to let a story be written by liars. It starts with noticing, with documenting, with refusing to be erased. By the time the judge closed the book, the pasture looked less like a courtroom than a country where dust settles, and you get to rebuild. I put up a simple sign at the gate that read "Private Ranch," and I meant it in the uncomplicated way my grandfather would have meant it, not to shut people out, but to tell the world that some things have names and some hands do not own them. So tell me, when someone in your neighborhood starts moving the fence posts of truth, who should be allowed to decide what's legal and what's moral? Is paper stronger than reputation? If you were faced with that choice to fight a crooked system or to walk away and keep your peace, what would you do? Drop a comment below. Tell your story. And if this stirred something in you, share it with someone who believes in standing up for what's theirs.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.